It is time to wake up. On this show, we cover the stories the mainstream media won't touch. Live from the Rocky Mountains. Welcome to Redacted with Natalie and Clayton Morris. Are you ready? Let's get uncomfortable. Outside because it is freezing outside, a big snowstorm. Welcome into the show on this Wednesday. So glad to have you here. So here's the snow. We got a hit here big in the Rocky Mountains with a big snowstorm.
Did indeed.
So it's just out. You can see a little, I don't know, like 8 inches or so.
And going.
Yeah, it's still coming down like crazy outside right now. So we're warm inside our Redacted studio though. And by the way, I should mention we got our new Redacted Christmas sweaters.
You should move the microphone.
Yes.
Yeah, 'tis the season to question everything. We have a buffet of offerings on our Redacted Christmas sweaters. Not just that one. We also have I Believe in Santa Before the Government. Something to that effect. Our graphic designer, Grim, worked really hard on these. And so it's fun if you want to have real conversations with your friends and family this holiday season. Most people don't. But, you know, there's also the Clayton type that can't help himself.
Yeah,
family gatherings.
Have like an old fashioned. You want to talk about 9/11?
9/11 Commission? Let's do it.
You want to talk about Building 7? Let's do it.
All right. Well, what we're going to talk about today is the deep state coming for the Trump administration. Is that to blame for their incompetency? We have a lot of journalists saying that it is, that there's attacks coming for President Trump, for Pete Hegseth, maybe. Or maybe they are as incompetent as it seems. We don't know. We're also going to talk about whether or not NATO is getting ready to strike Russia to justify their existence.
We're also going to talk with a CIA whistleblower about the CIA's involvement in Venezuela. This CIA whistleblower specifically had directed energy weapons targeted against him and his family for speaking out against the CIA. We're going to speak to him in the show today. We're also going to talk about Britain's censorship machine. Newly leaked documents, newly declassified documents are now being reported thanks to the Grey Zone and Kit Clarenberg, pointing out how insidious the UK government, MI6, MI5, and the like are inside of the halls of journalism inside the United Kingdom, actually coercing and controlling most journalists throughout the UK. They say they have a 90% success rate, 90% in controlling what journalists have to say inside the UK. So we're going to talk with Kit Clarenberg a little bit later in the show.
It's a good time to talk about Venezuela because now the State Department is saying, you know, they have Hezbollah. They are Iran. It's all the same. We're going to talk about that as well because basically they're recycling what we actually did in Iran-Contra. It's like the laziest narrative that we ever heard before, but they are pushing it to sell you a war. Are you buying? Let me know. If you are, why are you here? Redacted, we are an anti-war show. You should know that already, but we really thank you for being here. Let's get started. Before we do all of that, though, we want to tell you about our friends over at Shopify because did you know the Redacted store runs on Shopify? In fact, it does because Shopify is an excellent place to launch your ideas to the world. So if you have any e-commerce, any idea, anything you want to sell, when you see that purple Shop Pay button there, you know that store that you're on is run by Shopify. And why wouldn't you? It's so easy to use. You can take your ideas from idea stage to launch stage to $1 million stage. They have household names run on Shopify, not just the Redacted store. Mattel, Gymshark, all brands either established or just getting started use Shopify because they have round-the-clock customer service and fantastic tools. I was looking at that guy's stool. Tools to make your store look beautiful and run well. You don't have to know back-end e-commerce graphic design. So head on over to shopify.com/redacted. They have everything you need to grow your business. You can sign up for a 1-month trial period today. So one more time, head on over to shopify.com/redacted. One more time, it's shopify.com/redacted.
Well, is a deep state coup coming for President Trump? Are neocons, deep state types right now trying to push or control Trump one way or another? Or is something else going on here? Maybe we need to go a few layers deeper on this. But according to a couple of new reports out this morning, the first stop is to remove Pete Hegseth, which is something that they've wanted to do for quite a long time, actually, and then surround Trump and basically have full control of President Trump. Of course, we've been covering here on the show Susie Wiles and those other sort of deep state neocons that have been surrounding the president now and controlling and gatekeeping everything that he does. We've reported on Susie Wiles. Well, now people like Laura Loomer are claiming this plan is to first derail Pete Hegseth and then install Dan Driscoll, the Army Secretary. She says these leaks and stories are coming directly out of his office with the help of the deep state. Laura sat down with Alex Jones just a few minutes ago and explained what her reporting is showing. Listen.
My sources, high-level sources here inside the Pentagon, have told me that the stories that are being planted against Secretary of War Hegseth are coming from inside Secretary of Army Dan Driscoll's office. And if people have been following my reporting over the last few months, they know that I have called out the Army Secretary multiple times for some of his behavior since he has been the Army Secretary. Now it's even more concerning to find out that individuals in the Army Secretary's office who want Dan Driscoll to assume the role of Secretary of War are planting these stories. And if I was Pete Hegseth, I'd put my head on a swivel because, they're not getting these planted stories from nowhere. Clearly, people inside the Department of War are working with the deep state and the fake news media to undermine Hegseth because ultimately they want to stage a coup. And this is why it's all coming out at the same time. All the attacks on Secretary of War Hegseth regarding the strikes in Venezuela, the Signal Gate report, they want him out.
They want him out. So do you buy that?
Curious.
Do you buy that story? But you're curious about what? Go ahead.
Let's back this up a little bit.
A lot of people have questions about this in the chat.
Laura Loomer recently received a Pentagon press pass.
Right.
And in order to get one of those, you have to agree that you will not publish leaked stories or anything that's not ran through official Pentagon channels.
Right.
How is she doing this then? How come she can do this? Leaks inside the Army.
Well, I mean, yesterday was the first sort of official day where they got their press credentials. So I don't know if it predates that. I don't exactly know. You have to be on the level with the Pentagon, essentially.
Yes.
That's basically what you have to do.
It does not. Okay. Yeah.
Him though, right? I mean, so that's a good thing in their eyes because it sounds like they're trying to get in front of, he's putting things out, it's pissing the people off, and they're like, oh, we need to get a handle on this because you're pissing off the base.
Right. And so, again, this would seem to me like deep state publication is to defend the Secretary of War right now and be like, well,
100%.
Yeah. And so that's why this
that's
puts
why
up my spidey sense.
The whole thing smells weird to me. Absolutely. And that's why we're reporting on it. We'll report it. You can decide for yourselves. Laura Logan also just a short time ago, about a couple hours ago, just posted this about this sort of, I guess, impending coup that's surrounding President Trump. And we've invited Laura to come on the show. She's tied up today, but hopefully we'll be able to get her on the show tomorrow to talk about this. But she said, President Trump, after months of waiting, watching, investigating, and firsthand reporting, it appears increasingly obvious that you are being set up to fail, and there will be no coming back from this if you don't stop it now. The establishment seems to have its hooks in your administration, and they're sabotaging your efforts, blocking implementation of your orders, sidelining your political appointees, leaving countless critical positions unstaffed, and they've allowed your enemies to either stay in place or come back through the door to occupy key terrain. Almost a year into your presidency, you do not have your own administrator at agencies like the TSA and FEMA. In other critical areas like the Department of War, you still have career bureaucrats whose loyalties are most definitely not to you or your administration that are occupying many deputy positions instead of your appointees. These are just a few examples. So she's right about that. That's absolutely factually correct that there are so many bureaucrats inside of the FBI, inside of the Pentagon, that have been actively, as we've been reporting here on the show, actively trying to undermine what the Trump administration is trying to do and actually pushing him towards more of a war footing on a whole host of issues, whether
Possibly.
it's Gaza, whether
I mean, again, I look at this and I'm like, is it really a subterfuge? Does he have no power? Can he not see this? If so, is he that incompetent of a person? He ran on very clear agenda items of ending foreign wars, ending foreign involvement. That's something that we've made no progress on that. So is it really a subterfuge, or can he not do it? Can he not see this? Like, are we giving a pass to President Trump?
I love you're right about this.
Can I just finish this? There's a comment here. It was like, why are they so anti-Trump? We don't worship at the feet of any politicians or political parties. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to not be lied to and be journalists. So your personal feelings about any one person that we're talking about here is extremely irrelevant when it comes to selling the American people war. Go ahead.
So another person in the chat just said, you guys got to get off of Trump's nuts. So someone says we're
anti-Trump.
Anti-Trump. The other
Why
person
are they
says
against Trump?
We're just reporting what's going on here. And I don't like the treating of President Trump like a toddler. Like, this is what MAGA loves to do. They love to like surround. They're like, Trump has no idea what's going on here. He's like a little baby. He's like a little baby toddler.
Well, that was the Biden. That was the Biden talking point.
But in this, the idea, what I'm saying is that he has no clue that Susie Wiles is like undermining him. I mean, I find it hard to believe, as we've reported here, these people that are surrounding President Trump, he doesn't realize that he's being undermined, or he's he's literally part of the same process here. Going into Venezuela, it's not like he's like being pushed in any of these directions by these people. Mm-hmm. He's playing golf with Lindsey Graham, for crying out loud. It's his choice to go play golf.
These comments are saying, yes, you're against Trump. We're against these things that are happening. We don't want a war with Venezuela. We don't want a war with Iran. We don't want to continue to have Netanyahu be the guest in the White House. We don't want to continue to support corrupt Ukraine. So yes, those things we are against. And if Trump is for them, I'm sorry that hurts your feelings because you wanted to like him. Then this is not the show for you.
Yeah.
So
go
ahead,
also,
David.
they announced like during the campaign that these people were in the FBI and they had infiltrated, and we're gonna get rid of them. We're gonna get rid of all these people that are not in line with the Trump administration, and they didn't do that. And why? They want them there for some reason.
Right.
Obviously.
Now, I will give some. Here's one of our users, user Pepe in our chat room says, redacted, haven't you ever heard Trump talk? He has no idea who these snakes are that are around him. And I think, you have a good point. In his first administration, 100%, and our friend of the show, Colonel Douglas McGregor, confirmed this, that President Trump was surrounded by a lot of deep state swamp rats and a lot of neocons that he wasn't fully aware of and didn't do full vetting on. So, but we'll watch this. I mean, are there people actually actively trying to bring down President Trump and Pete Hegseth, or is this all part of a plan that they're fully aware of? I just don't like the sort of coddling, like treating him like a little toddler, like he's a little baby president.
It's not his fault. Is there a deep state or isn't there? Because Laura Loomer's reporting is that there isn't. And so, I
think what she's saying is there is a deep. Do you don't think that that's what she's saying?
In the past, she said there isn't. There's no Mossad connection. There's no, that kind of foreign influence. Nope, I don't want to see that. But when it comes to, it's a protective state here. Why would she protect Secretary Hegseth, who seems, very keen on the wars that she wants? So, we're looking at who is motivated for what narrative. And I'm not here to give anybody a pass when they are selling wars to our children's generation at the theft of the working class.
Yeah.
Well, and also she's given this special privilege now that she can come out and say my high level sources. So it kind of makes her sound more credible than she was previously to push these narratives. Which
puts her in line with the Washington Post, right? So this is not truly an independent now. This is exactly the same thing that the Washington Post did while they sat in that press room. So we're going to talk later about the narrative around the press and how the White House is now saying, we are the experts. The media lies. We don't. It's comical.
Well, NATO is getting ready to preemptively attack Russia. You can't make this up. And it makes sense. NATO and Europe have thrown everything they can at this conflict. And of course, it hasn't worked. Now, their next plan is to preemptively attack Russia. Desperate people do desperate things when they're backed into a corner. And as Moon of Alabama so astutely pointed out in a piece this morning, Politico was the first to report this insane idea. Europe thinks the unthinkable, retaliating against Russia. Yeah, it's unthinkable, right? So quoting now from this piece, Russia's drones and agents are unleashing attacks across NATO countries. Lie. And a lot of that has been already debunked, but doesn't matter, right? Ursula von der Leyen even said that her plane was like kept in the air too long thanks to Russia, like Russia was doing it. Turns out that was also debunked and proven wrong. So there's a lot of like fake stories about how Russia's attacking NATO countries right now. Anyway, NATO countries and Europe is now doing what would have seemed outlandish just a few years ago. Now NATO is planning how to hit back. Ideas range from joint offensive cyber operations against Russia and faster, more coordinated attribution of hybrid attacks, whatever that means, quickly pointing the finger at Moscow to surprise NATO-led military exercises. So these are 2 European government officials and 3 EU diplomats are quoted as saying, thanks to Politico. Financial Times also on this. NATO considers being more aggressive against Russia's hybrid warfare. Quoting now, Italian Admiral Giuseppe Covo Dragoni told the Financial Times that the Western military alliance was looking at stepping up its response to hybrid warfare from Moscow. Some diplomats, especially from Eastern European countries, have urged NATO to stop being merely reactive and now hit back. Okay. And they say a preemptive strike could be considered a defensive action. So we're going to preemptively attack Russia, but we're going to call it defensive because Russia is going to attack us, even though there's no evidence at all that Russia has any intention of planning to hit other NATO countries. This provocation. And when you can imagine, of course, the Russians are taking this very seriously. They know exactly what they're up to. Putin responded by saying this: we will go from being a special military operation to full-blown war overnight. Watch.
I've said that 100 times. We have no plans of fighting against Europe. But if Europe wants to fight and they start this fight, then we are ready right now. There is no doubt about this. But the only question is, if Europe starts the war, unleashes this war, because that's not Ukraine. With Ukraine, we use some surgical means. We are trying to be really careful. Because you understand why. This is not a war in the direct sense of the word. And if Europe all of a sudden wants to start a war, and if it does start a war, then very rapidly there might be a situation where we have no one to negotiate with.
Because there won't be anyone left, because this will be a World War III. So did you hear his point? I mean, what we've been doing against Ukraine has been like small and like surgical, special military operation. So Europe wants to actually go into a full-blown war with Russia? Absolutely madness.
Absolutely it is. All right. Well, now it all makes sense. This war with Venezuela is a war with Iran. They are basically the same, used to justify a it's a twofer. Guys, this is what we get. A war with Venezuela will help us hit back at Iran. If you think this sounds like a lazy recycling of the Iran-Contra scandal, you're right, except we actually did that. Now we're saying it exists, but we're not at fault. We're going to go bombing people. Here's Marco Rubio saying that Venezuela is the foothold of Iran in the Western Hemisphere.
The Venezuelan regime is a source of instability in the entire region. Over 8 million Venezuelans have flooded into neighboring countries as a result of the regime's activities within their own country, including into the United States. They also happen to be the foothold of Iran. That's not spoken about enough. Iran, its IRGC, and even Hezbollah has a presence in South America, and one of their anchor presence, especially for the Iranians, is inside of Venezuela.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Hezbollah is in Venezuela. Okay.
Yeah. Iran's in Venezuela now. Okay, now it all makes sense.
They're about 2 months away from having a nuke.
Right.
Just like Iran was trying to assassinate Trump. Yeah, now it all makes sense.
Yeah, I was going to say, did they find Iran's drone ship, the mothership, outside of
off New Jersey,
like hovering over Venezuela?
Yeah. Remember the Iranian drone ship was like, it was a mothership. It was not even just a drone. It was a mothership that was off the coast of New Jersey, and we have to stop them.
Well, let's do a little study, shall we? Okay. Here's a good book if you're interested in learning about Hezbollah. If you actually study Hezbollah, not the way Hillary Clinton uses them as a boogeyman, but what they actually are, you will understand the entire reason that Hezbollah was founded was to resist Israel's oppression of Arabic people. They were created when Israel invaded Lebanon in the 1980s, and they are extremists who believe that anyone connected to Western influence is fair target, including Americans and Israelis. They have no focus on South Americans at all. In fact, they are such Muslim extremists that they execute their own people in their own ranks, even for minor corruption, and their jihad forbids drug use and drug selling. Is there any proof, though, that they have sort of went outside their borders to enrich themselves with the drug trade in South America? There is not. Are there Lebanese people involved in the drug trade in South America? Sure, just like there are Italians, Colombians, Americans even. This would be the equivalent of Rubio saying, well, there are Catholic churches in Venezuela, so the Vatican is plotting a war. But can we prove it to fundraise for a war with Hezbollah, which gets us, if we go, as my grandma would say, go around your elbow to get to your backside, then can we get that war we want with Iran? I have not seen proof, but there are mountains of proof that the U.S. intelligence agencies have had their hand in the drug war in South America for decades. That part's magically left out. Now, the Wall Street Journal, here they are running cover for the war that the administration wants, saying, oh, yes, cocaine routes in Venezuela are absolutely a part of some Islamic jihad pipeline. What they leave out here is the longstanding history of the CIA's role in the South American drug trade, including the biggest scandal of all, Iran-Contra. So it was us that was supplying weapons to Iran and extremists in order to fund the drug trade. We did that. So for Marco Rubio to say Iran's doing that, but we did that. That's why the cartels were empowered. Okay, that's not mentioned at all. Is this the craziest thing? The CIA literally enabled cocaine networks through South America, or Central America, especially during the 1980s. They did collaborate with the Venezuelan National Guard generals who moved tons of cocaine into the United States. Exactly 60 Minutes reported this in the 1990s when they still did good reporting. The U.S. built, funded, trained, and shielded many of the military and police units in Latin America that later became the cartel. How do we know this? Not just from, I'm going to show you another book if we're collecting libraries today. This book. If you read this, you will not buy any of this BS. Alfred McCoy has been a whistleblower about the CIA's role in the drug trade for decades. If we had listened to him, we would have been much better off. Not just his great reporting, though. In the late 1998, there was this CIA report called the HITS report that concluded that the CIA did participate in cocaine trafficking during the Contra War and knowingly maintained relationships with and protected numerous Contra-linked individuals involved in the drug trade, and they hid this from Congress. Now, here's the kicker. The Iran-Contra comes from the U.S. secretly selling weapons to Iran, illegally then funneling the profits to the Contras, the same network tied to the cocaine trafficking. It was all one pipeline. Strange that the Wall Street Journal leaves that out, right? That it's all along been Iran. Where they get that money to begin with, it's always been us. Now, what our role is in this now, I don't know. Most likely, this did not stop. This, to me, now shows how Rubio can kind of lazily recycle an old narrative and point the finger at Venezuela and then Iran without any proof. It's as bad as weapons of mass destruction. I will follow it because, when the administration says Iran has a nuke, we look it up. We read the books. We talk to the experts. We haven't found it. Usually we come up empty when we follow a government war propaganda. But okay, we'll look. Now, Nick Fuentes was on InfoWars recently. He said that this Muslim problem in the United States is not what right-wing politicians claim, and that it's being used to sell us further wars in the Middle East. He's right about that. The U.S. Muslim population is about 1%. There is no demographic path to any kind of cultural takeover. That seems to be increasingly a right-wing talking point. Where is it? Again, show me the evidence. Here he is saying that this is a manufactured war, preparing the public for a war that the administration, the government wants. Watch.
Well, in terms of the Muslims, I continue to believe this is really not a major problem for the United States. Just in terms of pure numbers, Muslims are about 1% of the United States and concentrated in a few enclaves like in Minneapolis and in Dearborn. And of course, there's a lot of them in New York, and there's even some in Chicago. And Texas, there's a big story about that Grand Mosque they're trying to build. And of course, I don't like that. But even in the context of the demographic problem, the biggest immigrant groups into the United States in the past 30 years. It's Mexicans, Indians, Chinese, Northern Triangle, Filipino, like those are the major groups. And so if you're talking about America changing demographically or culturally, it's a Latin American and an Asian problem. It's a Chinese and an Indian problem. In Europe, that is where they have a Muslim problem. That is where they have Pakistanis and Middle Easterners and Africans pouring in by the millions. And they represent most of the non-white population in those places. And so there, I think that's totally true, and it's a real problem. Over here in the United States, I think that is basically a deflection. I think that any time that somebody talks about our Jewish elite, because we do have Jewish oligarchs like Larry Ellison and Mary Matelson and others, every time somebody talks about that,
Can we stop it here? So again, is this a right-wing talking point? Yes, there are enclaves, like there are Chinatowns, right, of Muslim populations. Are they a threat in the same way that right-wing politicians are selling them? Or is this, again, the same pattern? Invent a threat, inflate it, attach it to a foreign territory, ignore our own complicity, use it to sell a war. Now, the same script is happening, plug in. It's like one of those, those Mad Lib books, right? War with blank, just name a country, connect them to blank, gives us, they are doing blank. It's either they're gassing their own people, they're about to launch on Kuwait, they're weapons of mass destruction. This time it's drug trade coming for your kids. Again, these are not the drugs that are coming into the United States. And the best thing the United States could do to stop the drug war would be to stop participating in it. Let us know what you think. I have to sneeze.
All right. Mute her microphone, and you can still hear it. All right, coming up on the show.
Bless you.
Harrison Berger is going to be joining us. Bless you. Yeah, bless you, young lady. Are you all good?
I think so.
You back?
Yeah.
All right, we're good.
I got worked up about the drug war. You'd think I'm on one, but I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not on any drugs.
Are you? Not in sick medicine?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm on NAC,
All right.
which is a mucolytic.
All right, we got a lot of news to get to today, and I'm sorry we are running behind, so let's get into it. Harrison Berger from, Harrison Berger from the American Conservative is going to be joining us to talk about why the establishment is totally ignoring these recently declassified JFK files. Like, you think, hey, given the anniversary of his assassination just a few days ago, that there would have been more focus on this. There isn't. We're going to talk with him about that and new reporting on the Epstein files. They got their hands on over 20,000 emails. We're going to talk about that as well. But first,
we want to tell you about our friends over at Cowboy Cholesterol. Now, this is something that I actually put in my yogurt all the time because if you've ever nursed a baby, you know what cholesterol is. It is the first liquid that a nursing mommy produces for their babies, and it is liquid gold. It's basically an antibiotic. It's a probiotic. It has all kinds of protective elements that helps your baby to face the world. Well, you can get some from cows as well. You don't have to be a nursing mommy to get this liquid gold. Cowboy Cholesterol is made 100% in America from grass-fed cows, and unlike other cholesterol brands, it's sourced from the first milking of U.S. grass-fed cows. They only collect the surplus after the baby calves have been fed. Now, it's easy to drink. It's made with natural ingredients and no artificial flavors. You just add a scoop of either the chocolate or the vanilla or the strawberry into your coffee or smoothie. Or like I say, I use it in yogurt. It's a natural bonus. It helps with all manner of health. It optimizes hair growth, skin cell regeneration, bioactive ingredients for your gut lining. We can't recommend it enough. So check it out for yourself. You can scan that QR code on the screen or go to cowboycholesterol.com/redacted news. And for a limited time, you can get 25% off your entire order. Now, cholesterol is having a renaissance as a popular supplement, so go with a brand that you trust, that you know is made in the United States. Again, cowboycholesterol.com/redacted news also would make a great, it's probably a little too heavy for a stocking stuffer, right? A great proper present. We have this conversation all the time. Is that a stocking stuffer or is that a proper present? I'd say that's a proper present. What would you say?
Fully stock the stuffing if you put it in there.
It's big. It's bigger than you think. Also, yes, it comes with that little mixer there, which is great. So check them out.
I think it'd be great in a stocking as long as it was still in the container.
Well, yes, don't empty it into the stocking.
Just pour it in. Yeah.
Okay. Cowboycholesterol.com/redacted news.
Why is everyone ignoring the new JFK and Epstein-related files and information that have dropped? The mainstream media is oddly silent on this. Our next guest is not. He's just written a new piece going through them entitled, "Why is the Establishment Ignoring the Recently Declassified JFK Files?" Documents released this year expose how CIA spy master James Angleton concealed Lee Harvey Oswald's movement, hid a secret Israeli liaison, and lied to Congress, while the U.S. government spent decades redacting his ties to Israel. Maybe that word Israel is one of the reasons why they're ignoring it. Harrison Berger is a correspondent for the American Conservative, and it does some great work on this. And it's a great question, Harrison. Why do you think people are ignoring this story? Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me back. I mean, one thing is clear, and you mentioned it in the preface there. The U.S. government, the establishment media, the U.S. deep state, as well as Israeli-funded censorship outlets, do not want Americans putting the words Israel and JFK assassination in the same sentence. So much so that the United States government has redacted and kept redacted for more than 60 years at this point. We now have released it thanks to the efforts of the Trump administration. Back in February, they've redacted dozens of references to Israel. For instance, the testimony of the CIA chief of counterintelligence, James Angleton, the testimony that he gave to the House Assassination Committee. And so there's a lot that's been revealed about Israel's potential role or foreknowledge in the assassination from these documents. You're right to point out that the establishment media has completely ignored them too. When these files came out in March or February was when they first came out, establishment outlets like the New York Times on their daily podcasts, but also ABC and CBS News said that, well, there's nothing here. It's a big nothing burger is what they called it. They said anyone who suggests that these new files reveal any evidence of a CIA conspiracy is themselves a crazy lunatic conspiracy theorist. That's the label that they put on people like Oliver Stone, Jim DiEugenio, and Jefferson Morley, who, are journalists and academics and filmmakers and people who have been looking through the archives for decades. So that was their instant and reflexive reaction, just to dismiss them. It was predictable. I would say that what's surprising and what surprised me most is that the anniversary just happened. I think it was 4 or 5 days ago, maybe 6, with completely no notice at all. Nobody paid any attention to it, not even the New York Times. There wasn't even a write-up about it, which was fascinating because just this year we had, tens of thousands, over 60,000, in fact, documents related to the JFK assassination that were released, again, with no notice at all. It's hard to think that's not intentional.
Well, of course. And I know, I've been a fan of history, but, certainly this story, not a fan of the story, but I've just been fascinated by it since childhood. And it seems like every year on the anniversary of his assassination, there's documentaries, there's always new reporting, there's always talk about it, there's experts all over television. And here you literally have documents to talk about and report on, not just retreading the same old stuff. Specifically, your article argues that the CIA counterintelligence head, James Angleton, maintained a secret surveillance file on Lee Harvey Oswald for years before the assassination. And what does that, to me, that's a huge piece of this story. What does that suggest about how the CIA viewed Oswald ahead of time as a suspect, a target, a patsy, or something else? What do you make of that?
Let me start with this. We don't definitively know which people, and I say people on purpose, pulled the trigger when it comes to those events in Dallas, the assassination of the president. That being said, we know who worked very hard to cover it up. And one of the main people was James Angleton, the CIA's chief of counterintelligence at the time. As you just mentioned, he maintained this, what's called a 201 file, which is a surveillance file on Lee Harvey Oswald, starting in 1959. That was revealed actually a couple years back from records that were originally ordered unsealed by the first Trump administration. It was disclosed in Jefferson Morley's book, The Ghost, about James Angleton. So we knew that already. What's new is that, and what was revealed just this year, thanks to the Trump administration's latest disclosures is that the deputy that James Angleton assigned to monitor Lee Harvey Oswald, the prime suspect in the Kennedy assassination, was a major Zionist figure named Reuben Efron. What we also learned, thanks to these documents, was that we have now access to over 100 pages of James Angleton's testimony that he gave to the House Assassination Committee in 1975. And from those documents, we learned that he also maintained a secret assassination program called Operation Mongoose, which was originally directed at Fidel Castro's Cuba. But we now know, thanks to these disclosures, he was using an Israeli Mossad agent. He doesn't provide a name for the agent. He just says it's an Israeli man in his testimony to the House. But he was using an Israeli Mossad agent to run his secret assassination program that involved at least one country, Cuba. We don't know where else it was deployed, possibly, with the Kennedy assassination. But it was such an important operation, and he kept it so close to his chest that he even concealed this secret assassination program that he hired an Israeli to run from his own intelligence director. He also didn't disclose it to Richard Helms either. So it's not clear who else knew about this, even within the CIA at the time. James Angleton, I should mention, is someone who was described by the former Mossad director as the biggest Zionist of the lot. He has two, not one, but two memorials in Israel that were,
He's widely praised. Yeah, they've got like freaking memorials to him inside. He was the best friend to Israel that we've ever had, I think is how the saying goes for Angleton. Been having a secret Israeli liaison, calling him an Israeli man, but we know he's a Mossad agent, literally carrying out assassinations and surveillance. It speaks to these sort of broader Cold War operations that were unfolding at the time. And maybe this is why so much of this is being redacted, because I guess they don't think the American people could stomach learning that Israel was involved in the assassination of JFK.
I mean, I don't know. That's the question. I think that there's a lot that's revealed by the fact that they've, again, redacted the word Israel for over 60 years now. I think that what they choose to hide from the American public itself tells its own story. It reveals exactly what they don't want us to know. Why they don't want us to know it, the same could be asked about the Epstein files. This is a case where, the Trump administration could tomorrow, and I guess that they did sign into law a bill that will do this, they could release all the files. They have them. Instead, they're taking their sweet time with them. And it's burning political capital to do so, just like it, burned the political capital of every presidential administration, including Trump's, who promised from his first administration that he would release these JFK files, and not until 2025 are they being released. Disclosure is a good thing for any administration, and all of this secrecy. It's not good. The public can see it, and they want transparency.
Before I let you go, you brought up Epstein. Another one of your reports looked at, I think, 20,000 newly leaked or released emails that I don't know that it was covered anywhere else. You guys got your hands on like 20,000 of them, I believe, at the American Conservative. And what do these emails show? And again, you talk about this like drip feed. We get this like a tranche of documents, a few emails, and we have to sort of go through them. What did you guys find in this tranche of 20,000?
So to the question of who has access to them, Bloomberg actually had access to these emails for many months and did some reporting on them. They reported a bit on his relationship with J.P. Morgan using these emails, but they didn't go into the emails to the extent that we have, or that now Dropsite News, who also has access to the same email set, is going through them. This is Jeffrey Epstein's Yahoo email account. It was made available by this website called Distributed Denial of Secrets, which is very similar to WikiLeaks. They do exactly the same work that WikiLeaks did 10 years ago, posting large archives like of Ehud Barak's emails, for instance, or now of Jeffrey Epstein's onto the internet. And one of the things that's revealed in these emails, and DropSite has really done most of the reporting on it as well, is Epstein's connections to the Israeli government, but also his key role as an Israel lobbyist. One of the things that I personally found just fascinating was his obsession almost with how Israel was portrayed in American media, but also at the highest levels of elite power. There's a key exchange in there between Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell about a Davos conference. A Davos attendee is complaining to them about all the anti-Semitism at the conference. There was a book talk from a pro-Palestinian speaker. And as a result, they're trying to get Epstein to call the owner and publisher, the Canadian billionaire, the Canadian-American billionaire publisher of U.S. News and World Report, Mort Zuckerman, who's like Jeffrey Epstein and like Jeffrey Epstein's closest associate, Les Wexner, a major Israel lobbyist and a major Israel loyalist, fanatically so, to basically censor the conference. It's just, there's a lot of interesting things like that. The main purpose of our article, though, was to explore Jeffrey Epstein's connections to the U.S. security state and deep state, basically to explain how Jeffrey Epstein was essentially a client like any other wealthy billionaire oligarch in the United States, who could basically use the services of former and current law enforcement and security state personnel who have special skills, especially with surveillance. And he used that, of course, to target some of his victims in the lead up to his 2006 and 2007 charges and plea agreement. And so those are just some of the interesting things that have come out of the emails, his connections to the Israeli government, his role as an Israel lobbyist, but also the ways in which he was able to harness the power of the American security state and the relationships that he had with foreign intelligence agencies. To put it simply, he was not just some guy, as some people are strangely trying to make him out to be.
Yeah, no, I don't. I love that smokescreen. He was just some guy. He was just like a teacher. Just, he's got many billions of dollars and an island and multiple private jets. He's just a guy. Your article, though, stops short of like alleging sort of direct collusion between like the remaining sort of active intelligence law enforcement agencies and Epstein. What would you be looking for? What kind of additional evidence or documentation would you need, if it exists, to support this idea that current officials were compromised or complicit and tied to that?
It depends on what aspect. I mean, if it's the sexual blackmail component, I think that's a separate issue, one that we likely won't know for sure, even if it is true or does exist, because as has been reported, the FBI is working very hard to scrub through those files right now in Virginia. And so I would imagine that if the Democrats had, for instance, the goods on Trump, implicating him in some of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking, then they would have released what they had by now. The other option is that it doesn't exist, or that, again, they've scrubbed that from the files. So I haven't seen anything pointing to other major political elites being involved with the sex trafficking, although I'm sure they were.
Right.
I have no doubt that that was the case based on all the other circumstantial evidence in those emails and just what we know about Jeffrey Epstein and how he operated from, Vicky Ward's reporting and contemporaneous reporting from the 2000s and 1990s. We also know, based on Sagar and Chetty's latest reporting in DropSite, that he was a major sexual predator and a sex criminal. I mean, that was proven not just with his plea deal, but in those emails, he talks about at least 20 victims, people who were under the age of 18, who were likely, sexually assaulted and raped by Epstein. The question of, whether or not Bill Gates or any of these other big people were involved, it's all a matter of speculation now. And there would need to be something in those emails that points to it. I do really think that the most interesting aspect of the Epstein saga by far has been his intelligence connections, though, and just the question of who he was working for, and the question of where he got his money, which to some extent we still have not answered. Where exactly Jeffrey Epstein made his billions? We know that he was involved with Leon Black and Les Wexner, but to what extent and who provided the original capital is unclear.
Harrison Berger, great reporting from the American Conservative. Thank you for this. And again, why people are so quiet on this story. It's pretty obvious why people are ignoring both of these big revelations, of course. Harrison, great to see you as always. Keep up the great work. And please, everyone should read his articles. We'll make sure they're linked up in our description. Thanks so much, Harrison.
Thank you.
All right. Coming up on the show. Oh, your microphone.
Because I was sneezing. He's one of my favorites. I love having him on. It's just a measured, responsible researcher. And I appreciate that a lot. Something I value highly.
We do.
Yeah. So we really appreciate him coming. Coming up, we're going to talk to CIA whistleblower Kevin Shipp. This is exciting. He's going to tell us more about how the United States has targeted energy weapons. He has been to Venezuela, has actually been a victim of this himself. So this is first time redacted guest, and we're excited about that. We're also going to talk about Britain's censorship regime with Kit Clarenberg, who has been a victim of it, and we're excited to talk to him. But first, we want to tell you about our friends at American Financing.
Because what if you could delay your next 2 mortgage payments? That's right. Imagine putting those 2 payments in your pocket, finally getting a little breathing room ahead of the holidays. It is possible when you call American Financing today. If you're feeling stretched by everyday expenses, groceries, gas bills piling up, you're not alone. Most Americans are putting these expenses on credit cards. Credit card rates are insane. They're in the 20s or even 30s. And American Financing can actually show you how to use your home's equity to pay off that debt. I've always said you can't eat your own equity. Use it. Use it to pay off things, use it to invest. Having the equity in your home just sitting there doing nothing is a waste. Use the bank's money to invest and actually earn some money. Their salary-based mortgage consultants are helping homeowners just like you restructure their loans, save money every month, all without upfront fees. Their customers are saving an average of $800 a month. That's like a $10,000 raise right there without having to go change jobs. So call now before it's too late. American Financing, 866-890-8434 today, 866-890-8434 today, or go to americanfinancing.net/redacted. And their NMLS number is 182334, and you can check that out at nmlsconsumeraccess.org. And by the way, APR for rates in the 5s start at 6.196% for well-qualified borrowers. So call them today, 866-890-8434 for details about credit costs and terms. Visit americanfinancing.net/redacted. Well, new reports show how deeply involved the CIA is inside of the regime change operation in Venezuela, as we've reported here on this show. And new reports this week suggest that the CIA and special forces failed in a recent mission to kill or capture Nicolas Maduro. A friend of the show, Colonel Douglas McGregor, you recall yesterday on the show, said if those reports are true, then that is damning. Because, first of all, that those reports would even be out there is damning. And how in plain sight, the CIA is operating inside of Venezuela. Our next guest is a CIA whistleblower whose family was targeted by the U.S. government with directed energy weapons. He's written a book called Twilight of the Shadow Government, How Transparency Will Kill the Deep State. That author is Kevin Shipp, former CIA officer, and the USA went after him. Kevin, welcome to the show. Great to have you here. Well, it looks like you're muted. Unless it's on our side.
Did we mute him, guys? Or is that him?
Is that on his side or our side?
He's not muted on our side.
Okay. Might be on your side, Kevin. Okay.
Back?
Yep.
There you are.
There we are.
Good. Okay.
Great to have you here on the show, Kevin. Thank you so much. And so I want to get your take, first of all, just before we dive into more details about this, about the CIA Special Forces reports out of Venezuela over the past 48 hours trying to target, either capture or kill Nicolas Maduro. President Trump, when asked about it yesterday, Nicolas Maduro saying, oh, he will leave. He will leave. Like unequivocally, he will leave. So it's not a surprise the CIA operating there, is it to you, Kevin?
CIA has been involved in Venezuela going all the way back to the cartel called the Cartel of the Sun, which is run by a general who was a proxy of the CIA, who had gone in there and helped reconstitute his entire intelligence service with the goal of penetrating the entire Venezuelan government. And it turns out that the General Ramon Gulen was his name, was running narcotics the entire time and was the creator and the runner of the Cartel of the Sun. Now, the Cartel of the Sun is what the Trump administration is using as a pretext to go in and stage attacks first on these boats and then actually in Venezuela itself. And of course, with its long history of doing this, the CIA was behind the Secret Service and the general in creating the drug trade and some of the secret dealings back then and the eventual creation of the Cartel of the Sun. And the Trump administration is using the Cartel of the Sun as a pretext because that way he can go around Congress and stage covert operational attacks and assassinations within Venezuela, and also including these drug boats, which sadly resulted in the survival of two of the members of the drug boats who eventually were terminated after that, which is a real problem.
Now, Congress tried to understand the CIA's role in the late 90s and in the late 80s and the 90s. In fact, John Kerry was one who tried to figure this out. The CIA redacted a lot of information and tried to hide it from Congress. And so now the Trump administration is sort of presenting this as a right versus left type thing. In fact, just now Caroline Leavitt is saying, well, it's liberals who are siding with the drug traffickers. It's not as it's an unnecessary binary that they're using to distract us from the fact that we actually have been trying to get to the bottom of this for a long time, right?
You're right, Natalie. They always do that. They always pit the right against the left, and sometimes, frankly, it's like they're one and the same.
Yeah.
Just to avoid the fact that apparently Donald Trump now has either been aggrandized with the CIA or has been manipulated by it to go down once again, as they have done throughout their history and never learned, to start and engage in a coup to take down the leader of the Venezuelan government. And as always with the CIA, if you go through every single coup attempt it's done, it's about the oil and it's about the minerals. And Venezuela is replete with oil and gold and things that the United States wants. And that's the CIA's version of national security, is gaining oil, minerals, and gold from other countries for the survival of the United States. That's what's going on here in the pretext of attacking the Cartel of the Sun, which going all the way back, as usual, the CIA was involved in the creation of that, the general who was running that, and who was running drugs at the time. So here we go again. The CIA never learns, mistake after mistake after mistake. And here we are on the verge of war that Trump is allowing and engaging in, and this is very concerning. And he's found a pretext to go around Congress to do it.
So, do you think the CIA is manipulating President Trump? Because I don't like how the MAGA influencers out there treat Trump like he's like a little baby, a toddler. Like he's just, he just doesn't know. He's just being controlled from all angles, and he has no sort of, he has no decision-making abilities on his own. So do you believe the CIA has somehow manipulated him in a way that he's unaware of, or he's going along with it?
CIA has done this to every president that I've studied since I was a CIA officer, and they will come in and they'll say, look, sir, let me show you what you don't know. And they have pre-prepared briefings that show the president that if you don't take the action that we're recommending, it's going to be a serious breach to either national or international security. So you have to do this. That's the one thing, kind of a mild blackmail. And secondly, they'll come into the president, and I think especially with Donald Trump, this could be the case. Sir, you're the greatest president, the biggest supporter the CIA has ever had. We're so glad you're with us. We think this is an operation that will make you great in terms of countering the narco trafficking industry. And this is an operation I think that we should go with. And as the president, it'll put you at the top of stopping narco trafficking. So it would be in your best interest politically to do this. So that's how the CIA does it. They've done it with every president, going all the way back to President Reagan. I know this. I know the briefers. This is what the CIA does. I had hopes that Trump would do what Bobby Kennedy Jr. and I have been calling for and discussing quite a bit, and that's a reformation of the CIA. I don't think that's going to happen now based on this. I don't think the CIA will ever be reformed under the Trump administration, as sad as that is.
Now, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, is saying, oh, no, but Venezuela, they're run through Iran. They've got Hezbollah there without any real proof, sort of ignoring the history of that. It was us. It was the CIA that ran that Iran narco corridor. So does it seem to you, is there any proof that Iran or Hezbollah, which only exists in Lebanon to protect the Palestinians and the Lebanese, what would their interest be there? Is there somewhere we need to look to see that for proof? Because the government's not giving us any.
It's not there. There is none. As a matter of fact, Venezuela, with its natural resources, the gold and the oil, doesn't need the drug trade to survive for its economy at all. And the Cartel of the Sun is kind of an under-corruption complex part of the Venezuelan secret intelligence and services and part of that lower part of government. And Maduro is not running it. He's not complicit in it, which they're trying to make it look like. No, there's no Iran footprint there at all. If anything, there's a CIA footprint that goes way back to the Cartel of the Sun. There's CIA officers, boots on the ground in Venezuela now. They've been there for some time. They've been there going all the way back to the Cartel of the Sun. And so this is another, by everything that we can tell so far about what we've found, it's another CIA coup, every one of which has backfired. And they want to go in there and they want to take the government over and they want to take the gold and the oil. That sounds simplistic, but if you go back to every single CIA coup, going all the way back to Iran, which the CIA did, responsible for the overturning of that government, this is their MO. It's their MO because it's who they are. It's what they've always done. And I have to say, too, many times these operations are done without the knowledge or behind the back of the CIA director, him or herself, which usually are political appointees. And I remember the scuttlebutt talk inside that, well, they'll be here 4 years, so let's just kind of work around them. Both Director Woolsey, who I served under, and also Mike Pompeo, both came out and said that they knew the CIA was engaging in operations that they didn't even know about. So this is the CIA that I and others have been calling to be reformed. It is running many of its own classified programs, even without the knowledge of its own director.
Maybe you can help explain, Kevin, your deep knowledge of this. We interviewed Jordan Godreau on the show a few maybe months ago before he went missing. Unfortunately, from our understanding, he's safe, but he is, he's now wanted for exposing the truth of what happened in the first Trump administration with Venezuela. He explained that he was brought into the White House as a member of the Special Forces, a Green Beret, to lead an operation for regime change in Venezuela, with a lot of his Special Forces troops who moved on this. They were then blocked by the CIA, and a number of his men died. So the CIA got in the way of what the White House was trying to do. A lot of these special forces were killed. That was then, this is now. What do you think the difference is here between what the CIA did before and what they're doing now?
Well, obviously, there was a conflict between those two forces. The CIA had its own agenda in overtaking that country and continuing to allow the drug trade to go on. And the CIA, as you guys know as well as anybody, has been involved in traveling and trading in drugs, going all the way back to Laos and the Golden Triangle, all the way up to Iran-Contra. The CIA has allowed running of drugs for the excuse of either communism or now narco-terrorism. And they've also been linked to the torture and killing of Kiki Camarena, who was about to blow the whistle on the CIA's drug running in Nicaragua. So you've got the CIA and its dark operations coming against perhaps some special spec ops guys that were going in there for a different reason, and then the CIA could not control them. And of course, sparks are going to fly there.
Can I ask you, just as a follow-up on that, and then what's going on inside the Trump administration? Earlier, we were reporting on some of these new reports that are coming out that there's really a deep state coup trying to take out Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of War. And, again, this report's coming from like Laura Loomer and others. So what do you make of these reports? Is there any truth to that, or do you see this as more propaganda?
I don't think it's anything really concrete. I think it's a coup amongst the workforce. I know that many in the Pentagon are extremely upset with Pete Hegseth and how he's running the place, since he commanded all the generals to come back and watch him trot around on the stage and try to teach them how to do their business and how to lose weight. So you go with the Pentagon with these war-hardened generals and troops, and you've got Hegseth come in, which really doesn't have the level of expertise, in my opinion, to do this. And they're really upset about it. They want to get rid of him. There's no question about that. I don't know if you'd call that a coup. I'd say it's a coup in morale inside the Pentagon. Now Hegseth's got some real problems, because if indeed they did kill those 2 survivors in that drug boat that they bombed without any hard evidence that we've seen, by the way, then we've got an international war crime on our hands. And Hegseth recently in a cabinet meeting, when asked to explain, said, well, things happen in the fog of war. Well, we all know that when you have to use the term fog of war, you're covering up some kind of criminal activity and making an excuse for why that happened. So I think it's a coup of morale that's going on within the CIA. It is so compartmented. Ratcliffe, bless his heart, I think he was a good choice. But once again, I don't think he's going to be able to make any changes. He fired 1,200 employees involved in DEI, which is a good move. But that's it. That was a window dressing. As far as a coup inside the CIA, I don't have any hard evidence of that. I haven't even heard rumors of that. I think the opposite may be possible, that inside the CIA, hey, here's a president that's going to let us operate again and go in and do a coup, and we'll get more funding again because of this, which is the goal, and more than anything else, will satisfy the CIA's ultimate national security goal, their version of oil, gold, for the strength of the United States.
Now, something I learned from the research of Alfred McCoy was that the CIA used U.S. aid in the drug trade. It was very much a tit for tat. Here's some rice in exchange for your drugs. A lot of that's the way it happened in Asia. And so I thought, maybe naively at the beginning of the Trump administration, that handicapping U.S. aid might be a way to handicap the CIA, but that was a speed bump, right? Was I naive to think that?
If you read Twilight of the Shadow Government, which I wrote at some risk, and I wrote it in such a way that the CIA couldn't stop it for obvious reasons, they blacked out, redacted things in my last book that were illegal. They shouldn't have done it, and it wasn't classified. So I saw that coming. So when I wrote Twilight of the Shadow Government, I wrote it in such a way I gave the CIA 3 months to sit on it, knowing that they were going to try to stop it. And then I went ahead and published it so that the world could see what they do, including drug trafficking and funding illegal operations using arms running and gun running that Congress didn't even know about. It's a dirty organization on the operational side. Now, 80% of CIA employees are good people, good patriotic people, just providing for their families. It's the 20% in the upper level, the coup planners and the others who do not believe, even by Pompeo's own admission, they don't believe in the U.S. Constitution. They believe in the expansion and the power of the CIA as the true savior of national security. It's a narcissistic point of view that these people hold. I was on the 7th floor during Iran-Contra on William Casey's detail. I've seen that firsthand. The CIA has got to be reformed, but the only way it's going to happen, as I've said on many interviews, is the American people rise up and demand that their congressmen and senators order reform of the CIA and more hearings. And if the congressmen and senators, many who are in the pocket of the CIA, if they don't, vote them out.
Clayton and I are just dueling orders. Like, why haven't we read this book?
Yeah, no, we're literally buying your book as we speak.
As you're speaking.
Kevin, I'd love to have you back for a deep dive because, I mean, maybe you can just kind of briefly tell our audience here your experience and when you were targeted with directed energy weapons or energy weapons by the CIA, the government coming after you specifically. For people who are out there who are like, the directed energy weapons don't exist. What say you?
Very quickly, I uncovered a vulnerability in embassies overseas where any foreign intelligence agent could go in and identify our covert CIA case officers and by extension their assets. And I wrote a report and published that to CIA management, and they blocked the report. They deleted it from the server. They called and threatened me and told me to drop it, destroyed all the documents, until the Department of State got hold of my report and went out and did a secret investigation with me involved without the CIA knowing about it, and came out and did a report published to the entire intelligence community that the CIA had allowed this vulnerability to be there on purpose, put the lives of our case officers at risk. Anybody in the visa section could go in and identify who they were. And the CIA was rebuked publicly. It was put in a report to the entire intelligence community. with my name on it. So I knew that after that, I had a bit of a laser dot on my back. They posted me to a secret base in the Midwest of the United States. My family became immediately ill. My wife was bleeding from her gums, bruising all over. My son's immune system was so bad they thought it was AIDS, and we tested it, and it wasn't. He has never been the same since. They went after him mentally, dramatically. He had a dramatic change in personality, and frankly, right now, I mean, we're praying for him. We're not exactly sure where he is. We know he's still alive, but he took me aside one day and he said, "Dad, they're trying to kill me." And I know for a fact that Joey was on the base where I was, where the CIA had buried a lot of skeletons that they were afraid of Congress finding out. That's why they went after me initially, that in the report. Well, Joey had snuck out at night and gone into some of their facilities without them knowing about it and seen some of the things. So they went after him with a vengeance. They ran him up, they tailed him, ran him off the road. And then he had a dramatic personality change, was diagnosed with clinical PTSD. He was a normal kid. He wanted to grow up like his dad and be a cop or a federal agent someday. And now he has a completely different personality. So did I see a directed energy weapon hit my son or my family? No, but the symptoms are there. And you have to ask yourself, why did the CIA know directed energy weapons existed in the first place? When they came out and said, well, this may be what they're experiencing in this embassy. Well, how did you know that even existed? In any event, something was done to my oldest son, and it was something to that effect. I don't go out there publicly and say my son was hit with a directed energy weapon, because I'm an evidence guy, as a former analyst and intelligence collector. But they did something to him, and they hit him with something, and we'll just leave it at that. Now, as a father, to see them do that to your son, of course, that explains some of my commitment and lack of fear about what the CIA is going to do or try to do to silence me. In that they need to be reformed, broken apart, because there are whistleblowers people don't even know about, CIA whistleblowers that have been destroyed and eliminated. And the CIA uses the power of secrecy. And in one chapter of my last book, before Twilight of the Shadow Government, I call it the tyranny of secrecy. The CIA rules by secrecy. It rules Congress. It rules the president. In the Epstein case, with the intelligence connection with Israel and the CIA, if any of that, and I'm sure it is classified, we'll never see it. It'll never see the light of day, because the CIA has classified it and buried away, and not even Congress or the Gang of Eight can see it. So it is time for their reform, but it's going to be up to the American people to do that.
Horrible, horrible story, Kevin. Thank you for your bravery and sharing it with us. Like I said, I'd love to have you back on the show, and we can spend more than an hour or so and just really deep diving all of your experiences at the CIA more deeply. The book is called Twilight of the Shadow Government: How Transparency Will Kill the Deep State. Natalie and I both just bought it. I'm going to have my own copy, so she can't touch it. And I'll have my
I'm going
own
to stamp it with my "This Book Belongs To."
Yeah, my own highlights, my own highlighter. Kevin, great to see you. Sorry for what your family's gone through. Thank you for your bravery and your truth telling, and we'll hope to have you back soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, go up. But let's put this book back up on the screen, guys. Like, people need to see this. I mean, the CIA scared of somebody like this for telling the truth. And to his point, it needs to be broken down, torn apart. So if you get a chance to buy the book, do it and support this kind of bravery. So thank you to Kevin.
All right. We've had amazing guests today. We're not done. Kit Clarenberg is about to join us. He was, you may know, he was arrested for journalism in the United Kingdom. So he's going to tell us more about Britain's censorship machine in just a second. Before we do that, though, we want to tell you about our friends over at Genucel, because if you are thinking that you'd like to get some holiday skincare for Christmas or for yourself, then look no further than Genucel. Genucel has a Christmas special. You can save over 70% off their amazing skincare products. It includes their jawline treatment to tighten, tone, and contour your neck and jawline. So say goodbye to that turkey neck and sagging jawline and get compliments around the dinner table. When you order today, Genucel will include their immediate effects for results you can see in minutes, not hours, plus their top-selling deep firming vitamin C serum included in their essentials package. So treat yourself this holiday to 10 years off your appearance. Everyone will notice the difference. 100% guarantee back or your money back, and 100% guarantee or your money back. That is the Genucel promise. So let them know that we sent you. Go to genucel.com/redacted. You'll get an extra 10% off plus free shipping if you use our code redacted at checkout. Again, that's genucel.com/redacted. One more time, genucel.com/redacted.
So there's a brand new report out over at the Gray Zone, and it's a big one. Kit Clarenberg has uncovered internal files showing how the British government has been running a quiet but very aggressive censorship machine. This isn't some fly-by-night operation. It's called the old D-Notice system, which was now been rebranded as the DSMA. And according to these documents, they're not just offering guidance to journalists. Hey, we think you should cover this story or maybe take this angle on it. They're actively shaping and sometimes totally killing stories altogether. So what really jumped out to me, though, is that they brag about a 90+% success rate going into newsrooms and getting them to fall in line. And if you don't, well, guess what? Some independent news outlets were actually labeled extremist for refusing to play ball. So they're extremists. It's wild. So I wanted to bring Kit Clarenberg on from the Gray Zone to walk us through what he and his co-author found in this, how the system actually works behind the scenes, and what it means for press freedom going forward. Does press freedom even exist in the UK anymore at all? Here is, I guess, extremist journalist Kit Clarenberg, who joins us now. Kit, great to see you again. Welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you very much for having me on, Clayton. You forgot my designation as a dangerous individual, which Meta bestowed upon me to justify banning people who share my work on Facebook. Yeah, I mean, this is, if I do say so myself, this is pretty big. The DSMA committee, which is the acronym DSMA, meaning Defense Security Media Advisory Committee. It operates in plain sight, but is also kind of concealed from public view because no journalist, quote unquote, ever talks about this, and with good reason, because it is an absolutely extraordinary and unique in the world system of press censorship and suppression, which is in theory completely voluntary. So the committee issues what are known as D notices, or they write to journalists and editors if they think a story might be published or is going to be published that contains sensitive information the British state doesn't want in the public domain. And they're very polite, very it's all very British and gentlemanly and dishonest. And they say, oh well, could you please not include this detail, or could you just avoid this story? And I've been writing about the DSMA committee for a number of years. And it's often quite difficult to get audiences to wrap their heads around this, because yes, it seems like a contradiction in terms. A voluntary system that has a 90% success rate in suppressing inconvenient truths and facts and perspectives, even when information is in the public domain. But it's all there in this declassified trove that myself and my co-author William Evans, we spent many months battling Australian authorities to get these documents via freedom of information, because the DSMA committee is ostensibly, quote unquote, independent, even though its headquarters is in the Ministry of Defence offices. It is wholly funded by the British Ministry of Defence, and all of its apparatchiks are government employees. By claiming they're independent, it means the DSMA is completely immune from FOI requests. But what a few years back, the Australian government explored the idea of adopting the D-Notice system itself. And they had extensive consultations with the committee on its practicalities, how it functions, and its potential applicability to Australia's media ecosystem. And so they were forced, after much tussling, to hand over these very revealing documents, which include an internal review of the DSMA system that was commissioned in the wake of Edward Snowden's disclosures. They contain communications between the DSMA committee and Australian government officials. The Australians had a large number of questions about how the system worked, and it's all extremely revealing, and it offers unique insight into this, uniquely British form of press censorship, which is completely voluntary. It's like elective self-subjugation by mainstream reporters, because they're not legally obliged to follow DSMA quote unquote or they're not duty bound to abide by a D notice saying don't report on this particular topic. But yes, as you mentioned in the introduction, it has a 90% success rate, and in discussions with the Australian government, committee officials boasted that almost never, like very, very, very rarely, does news outlets report on things that the DSMA doesn't want them to report on, the level of involvement in the DSMA of the DSMA committee in how the British media reports on national security is really quite extraordinary. And there are all these references to how well journalists send us their stories in advance of publication, and we authored by the British Ministry of Defence.
Could you repeat? You broke up there that last few sentences. You said that basically it's like you broke up. You said something about like the British Ministry of Defence is essentially like writing news articles in a way. Can you just go back like a few sentences?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. So, it creates a situation whereby voluntarily mainstream journalists are submitting their work to the Ministry of Defence in advance of publication, and the Ministry of Defence is editing and amending their work, and it results in the vast proportion, if not, almost the universal total of British media reporting on matters of quote unquote national security being written by the Ministry of Defence. Now, of course, the very concept and phrase national security is extraordinarily broad, and it means whatever the British state wants it to mean. And what's quite interesting is that in these classified documents, there is a lengthy table listing various stories that were subject to DSMA interest between early 2011 and late 2014. It is left to our imaginations what stories the DSMA committee has pounced on and suppressed and distorted since then. But on top of topics such as in 2012, the DSMA was very interested in media reporting on SAS, which is to say British Special Forces involvement in Syria, that was widely rumoured at the time, but no substantive reporting emerged on it, no doubt due to DSMA intervention. But there's all sorts of other topics as well, such as the 2011 London riots, MPs visiting brothels, and high-level corruption, which the DSMA also saw fit to make interventions on. So, it's pretty much anything the British state doesn't want in the public domain is open to DSMA editing, DSMA suppression. The list goes on. Something that really jumped out to me going over this was in 2013, the DSMA issued advice on dozens of times in relation to British forces and British intelligence in relation to the death of Princess Diana in August 1997. It's just like, quite what they were seeking to suppress and quite what wasn't published as a result isn't clear. But it's evident that, yes, the DSMA has grand designs, and there's an assumption that, well, we can tell journalists what to report on and not report on, and indeed how to report on it, covering a vast amount of subject areas.
You talk about this 90% success rate that they're boasting about. So how exactly do they measure that? Like, what does success actually mean to them? Does it mean the suppression of particular facts in a story? They don't want them talking about members of parliament going to brothels. They want to keep, where do they have some sort of a scale that they're saying we have a 90% success rate because we've got the BBC to not do this? Can you maybe walk through some of the mechanics of that? And by the way, who's involved in this? So we're talking state-run media, essentially, the BBC and others?
Yeah, sure. In regards to the latter, the DSMA committee, every major newspaper and TV news broadcaster is a member of this, and is getting directions from them. But yeah, as I say, it's run by the Ministry of Defence. It brings together representatives of the security services, government agencies, of MI5, MI6, the military, and it creates a kind of client relationship between powerful individuals and organizations and journalists who are, in theory, meant to hold them to account. And the DSMA boasts about how it holds annual tours of the offices of GCHQ and MI5 and MI6 for mainstream reporters, which of course means that it is extremely unlikely that those reporters are going to write negatively about their newfound friends in the British deep state. And there's another thing that jumped out to me as well, which is that public minutes of DSMA committee meetings, they frequently refer to apologies having been received from journalists. Now, presumably these wayward reporters neglected to consult the DSMA before publishing a certain story, or they let particular information seep into the public domain that the committee wasn't happy about. And I cite in the piece, there is a kind of veteran journalist who's now unemployable by token of being a bit of a dissident, called Ian Cobain. He wrote this excellent book in 2016 called The History Thieves, which refers to how British reporters voluntarily submit between 80 to 90% of stories they think could be of interest to the committee for official examination before publication. So I suppose their 90% success rate is, well, in 90% of cases when we have asked journalists not to report particular facts or to ignore particular stories, they have acquiesced, again, completely voluntarily. A recent example of this is in late 2023, the DSMA committee issued notice saying that they didn't want stories about British special forces involvement in quote-unquote counter-terrorism operations in Gaza to enter the public domain. Now, again, we don't have to think very hard about what those kind of operations might entail in the Gazan context. This is it is effectively referencing that how the SAS is directly involved.
Yeah, just to be clear on that. So this was a major concern to them. They didn't want the British people to know that British special forces were in Gaza. And, your mind could run wild as to what those operations would look like, aiding and abetting the Israelis to carry out attacks on quote unquote Hamas or otherwise, right? So they didn't want the British people to know that.
Yeah, indeed, and lo and behold, this topic has completely vanished from any consideration in the mainstream media. Declassified UK, which is named in the declassified documents as an example of a quote unquote extreme publication. They have done an enormous amount of work on how British military and intelligence flights are routinely flown to Israel from nearby Cyprus, where Britain has this massive military and intelligence base. And yeah, they don't want that in the public domain, even though it is public information. You can see on I think it's called Skyscanner. There is a website which shows the path of flights. This is publicly accessible information, and yet the British media will effectively kowtow to the diktats of the DSMA and simply not mention this. It's a really quite extraordinary fudge, and yes, a devastatingly successful one. Now, I might add as well that the references to the Classified UK, I mean, this is an independent publication, which it does do some fantastic work. The DSMA cites examples of declassified reporting on topics which, in theory, don't breach DSMA rules, but they're still regarded as problematic nonetheless. And I think, yes, it speaks to the fact that the DSMA does have kind of global ambitions, and it seeks to act well beyond its stated purview. There are references to how, well, by token of our interventions, the international media doesn't report on British national security matters. So, they not only want to censor what the British media is saying, but what overseas publications report on as well.
Well, that's what I was just about to ask you. I wanted to ask you maybe to clarify a little bit here who these independent outlets are that are being labeled extremists. So you mentioned UK Declassified, so they're saying we're going to report this information anyway. They're labeled as extremists. Who else is labeled as an extremist? Because I'd like to follow those people. And then on top of that, yeah, I was just about to ask you the U.S. involvement in this, and U.S. journalists or other countries, but specifically the United States. Are United States journalists reached out to by the British government and also asked not to report on these particular things?
Well, I mean, that's certainly the direction the DSMA wants to push in, and I think that what's notable is, and I touched on this in the piece. At the risk of self-promotion, I urge all your viewers to check it out. Is that the DSMA for a very long time has viewed social media as a real problem, and a growing one as well, because people can all over the world can post sensitive information that the British government doesn't want in the public domain. The DSMA committee is very keen to get hooks into major social media platforms to try and dictate to them what's allowed and what isn't. On their own networks, which is pretty extraordinary, and I mean, I think it speaks to an enormous sense of kind of entitlement. I mean, this is like a uniquely British system that wants to impact public perceptions the world over, and is trying to drag not only British media outlets but also major tech platforms in the US into their censorship web, this is something they've been trying to do for many years. They are looking at how legislation in different countries can be exploited to further their interests and further censorship. I mean, it's a really quite extraordinary thing that that say X or the form would be subject to this quote unquote voluntary regime, which they actually kind of have to go along with. And I might add as well that it is repeatedly stated in the declassified documents that the DSMA is not concerned with information in the public domain. They don't seek to intervene and prevent journalists reporting on that. And then yet their own publicly available minutes show that they do this all the time. And there is, for instance, in April 2023, there was a DSMA meeting where it was discussed how a journalist was on the verge of publishing a story about British Army involvement on operations overseas. I suspect this was Ukraine, I'm not sure, but and it talks about the journalist complied with the DSMA's demands that they not report on this, but they pointed out that, well, all of this information is in the public domain. So, I mean, it's a barefaced lie that they don't concern themselves with, open source information. And yeah, as I say, they are seeking to expand this in every direction, including to cover quote unquote disinformation, which is, I mean, that is like disturbing, because of course disinformation, like national security, is this completely meaningless, nebulous concept, which means anything that the British government decides is quote unquote disinformation.
When you were going through these documents, Kit, was there something that's made you stop and go, wow, it's even worse than we thought? I mean, I know you've seen a lot. You're an incredible journalist. You've seen a lot of dirty stuff in your time. But is there something you said, holy smokes, like this is what they were concerned about? This is what they were trying to get suppressed? It's even worse than we thought?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that as I mentioned, the series of logs about what was requests for suppression between 2011 and 2014. I mean, it had all manner of references to topics which have nothing to do with national security, including child sex abuse, the Metropolitan Police, that's London's police force, members of that being involved in downloading child pornography, and also the very vague and broad concept of Scottish independence. It's like there is this assumption that the DSMA can make demands of reporters on any conceivable topic. And that they will play ball, and they do 90% of the time. And I think that really jumped out, how broad their purview is. I mean, it is well known and established that they focus on, or the DSMA focuses on matters related to, the military and British intelligence. I mean, this is just so far out of any definition of national security. And there is a a rather opaque scandal that hasn't gotten very much, if any, mainstream media attention, and we can see why. There are several cases of individuals claiming that they were the victim of elite sex abuse rings. When they were children, that they were raped by prominent influential figures, including state officials, and the DSMA wants to crack down on this as well. That really jumped out, and it's like, you've got to bear in mind, since in the period since 2014, I mean, that's over a decade now. I mean, how many sex scandals involving high-profile figures have been silenced or censored as a result of DSMA intervention?
That's crazy. And who would be directing this? Hey. I get the, we don't want our special forces being outed. I get that piece of it. And you could sort of claim under national security that we don't want these individuals being hunted down, and the same that you would do with spies and other countries, et cetera. I understand that from a national security concern. But to protect members of parliament, to protect members of the police force, to protect high profile elites who have nothing to do with national security because of their downloading of child porn or child sex trafficking or the abuse of children, you're protecting these people? Who, I want to know who the people are inside the DSMA or MI6 or MI5 or in the Ministry of Defense who are actually actively defending pedophiles.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it goes back to this very broad notion of national security, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, and this is something I've written about recently as well. But Prince Andrew, he has now been stripped of effectively excommunicated from the royal family, and been stripped of all of his titles. He can no longer refer to himself as a royal. you know, I would bet a vast amount of money that his sexual exploits, which were, you know, not a secret, and his relationship with Epstein were like subject to DSMA, you know, intervention, because, you know, written into the effective constitution of the British military, of MI5 and MI6, is defending Britain in the name of king and queen and country. Automatically anything that's harmful to, you know, Britain's reputation or, you know, kind of public relations image becomes of interest. As I say, you know, I think that's what like really jumped out to me. It's just the extraordinarily broad array of targets, and, you know, and since 2014, we've had the Epstein scandal, which, you know, clearly does extend, you know, all the way to Buckingham Palace. We've had numerous controversies involving parliamentarians and other prominent figures, current and former, emerge into the public domain, usually via foreign media, it must be said. And it's like, you know, to give an example of the kind of devastatingly effective nature of the DSMA, when The Guardian in 2013 began reporting on Edward Snowden's disclosures about NSA and GCHQ spying, the entire British media, with the exception of The Guardian, didn't go near the story. You know, this is like a global scandal which was covered in, you know, every corner of the world. And, you know, Britain uniquely was, for the most part, completely silent about it. And, you know, as I say, this is why the DSMA wants to extend its tendrils, you know, even further. It wants to infiltrate directly or indirectly newsrooms in the US, throughout, you know, the Five Eyes global spying network, but and you know, just, you know, the West more generally. It's really quite extraordinary. And I might add as well that the fact that the DSMA was coordinating with Australian officials, it shows that they're keen to export this model overseas. And it's not the only censorship mechanism that the British state maintains. There is a British government body that's now called the National Security Online Information Team, which used to be called the Counter Disinformation Unit, and it got this when it was still branded the CDU. It got busted for cracking down on "quote unquote" COVID disinformation, which is, you know, by definition, this was an international event. And the CDU was pushing back against critics of lockdowns, of social distancing, of vaccine passports, of vaccine mask mandates. Its scope was truly international in scale. And I mean, in respect of, say, like the proxy war in Ukraine, the CDU was also involved in tackling "quote unquote" disinformation around Bucha. Now, the ever mysterious Bucha incident, which, you know, this is now nearly 4 years ago, or, you know, it's like 3.5 years ago, we were told by British officials that the Russians were committing genocide, and that Bucha was a demonstration of this, by token of the Russians allegedly having massacred innocent, defenseless civilians in the town. Now, this was fundamental to keeping the war grinding on, and hitherto fruitful peace talks between Zelensky and Putin be sabotaged. And again, you know, this has an international component. There were people, including US Defense Intelligence Agency officials at the time, who were saying, well, what happened in Bucha, even if it is true that Russians killed civilians, you know, and this is, you know, ruining any chance of a negotiated settlement, pushing this false narrative, in the public domain. And, you know, we fast forward to today, and the BBC refers to "quote unquote" alleged Russian atrocities in Bucha. So they are now admitting the serious questions hang over this event. There are a wide variety of, yes, international incidents referred to in the logs of requests and advice submitted and received. Events in France like the mysterious 2012 assassination of the British Iraqi al-Hili family. This is again a story with it occurred in France. The al-Hilis were the head of their family was an individual who was involved in Iraqi chemical, biological, and nuclear research. That has an international implication, and the DSMA was preventing journalists from reporting on what happened. And we must ask ourselves, why, and also, yes, the impact this had more widely on how overseas media reported on this, still unsolved mass murder of a family in the French Alps. It's very. It's something I think that people the world over need to be concerned about, because I think Britain is the kind of this core nucleus of online and indeed offline censorship, and it seeks to bring other countries into its fold.
Well, I think, and there's broad implications like continuing the war in Ukraine, of course. So the lies around Bucha. I mean, we were in deep trouble. We got banned on YouTube as when we were reporting about Bucha. So there was a concerted effort to keep that propaganda going. The maternity hospital story, they didn't like covering the truth about that in Ukraine. So I can only imagine this was part and parcel of keeping the war in Ukraine going, that machine going, of course. I would encourage our audience, deep dive this, go over to the Gray Zone, read Kit's incredible work on this. He's been doing some great work on this story for a long time, and the Britain's censorship machine there. Glad to have an extremist on the show, Kit. Great to see. Keep up the extremist work.
We must stick together, and it's like, I think that, the fact that you got banned from YouTube for critically reporting on Bucha, that was probably the British who were responsible. So maybe write a strongly worded letter to Downing Street on that one, Clayton. But thanks for having me on, my friend. God bless you.
Always. Thanks so much, Kit. Thanks so much, Kit Clarenberg from the Gray Zone. Check it out. We'll have links to it in the description below. Thanks, Kit. Great to see you.
God bless you. Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for being a part of our show here. Thank you so much for subscribing and supporting independent journalists like the team over at the Gray Zone, who do incredible work, because you can see the state-run media that, of course, is gets invited inside the Pentagon now, gets to set up their desks. We know the members of the New York Times and the Washington Post that are just extensions of the intelligence state, right? Ken Delanian over at NBC News, who just gets fed information from the intelligence community. People at CNN, we were watching it live in Ukraine when they were being handed information. So again, independent journalism is incredibly important. So supporting people like Kit Clarenberg, the folks at the Gray Zone who do incredible work, is so important. So thank you guys for watching and subscribing. And we'll be back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And we hope you have a great night. Take care, everyone.